If you like being able to watch the podcast, make sure to let me know by subscribing to this channel. Everything is working out for me. It's working out for you, too. It just takes believing that it is. We can have, be, and do anything. The key is to care about how you feel and choose to feel good right now. I'm here today with Dr. Beth Stuart, and I'm super excited to have this conversation because Beth has done something that so many people want to do, and that is living through social anxiety and turning it around into a positive and then helping other people with their own. And I really think that her message is something that can benefit a lot of people. I believe in it, and I'm just excited to see what she brings to this conversation for all of you guys. Beth, thank you for being here on the show. I really appreciate it.
I'm so excited to be here, Katie. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So, can you kind of just introduce yourself a little bit? Let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Beth Stuart, and I am from South Carolina, hence the Southern accent.
Which I
Um,
love.
Thank you so much. I opened up my own business about 2.5 years ago. It's called Emerging You. But before that, I was in higher ed administration. And then I had a previous life. I've had many lives, right? I had a previous life as a medical social worker. And so just sort of been in a lot of different arenas in my life.
Yes, you definitely have. And actually, I tuned into your Facebook Live this morning and I learned some things about you. So, with this social anxiety, you actually just recently were able to diagnose it or put a label on it and be like, oh, this is what I've been living with for all these years.
You're absolutely right. I think I would had described myself as being not a very confident child, not a very confident teen, not a very confident adult in my earlier years, but I never described myself as having social anxiety. And I think that would have helped. That would have helped me a lot because I feel like once you can name something, it takes away the power of it. But at the same time, Katie, I was afraid to name it because out of fear of, well, if I tell people that I struggled with this, then they might not choose me as their coach, or they might not follow me anymore, or they might not come to me for help. But actually, I'm finding that it's just the opposite. That if you will be vulnerable and say what it is that you struggle with and how you've overcome that, and I'll be honest, is it gone completely? No. I got really anxious before my live today, really anxious. And I know now what to do with that anxiety and how to power through it, but that hasn't always been the case.
Well, that's more than half the battle right there. Just knowing how to approach it when it does come. Otherwise, it gets overwhelming and it takes over. So that's
Exactly.
huge. But I wanted to speak a little bit to what you just said because
Hmm.
I am relating. Because as a mental health counselor, I had that feeling of I can't show that I have any issues in my life, or people won't look at me like I know what I'm talking about, like I'm an expert or a
Right.
professional. Like I can guide them if I can't guide my own life. And
Right.
that can get overwhelming. That anxiety of, I can't be my whole self in front of
Hmm.
these people. But
Hmm.
I think you're right. I think when you step into that, I'm a genuine person and people sense that and it's attractive. And despite the fact that we all have our battles and we all have our
Yes.
issues, people still want that help from you because they sense that you want to help. And really, who knows better on how to overcome something but somebody who has already done so?
That is so true. So true. And I think it is really hard. Um, And I'm sure maybe you found this too. The higher you go in your education and get your master's and then you get your doctorate, sometimes that imposter fear comes through. But also that thing that you just mentioned, if I get on social media or if I get on a podcast and I say, you know what, I struggle with social anxiety, then it's that fear of yeah, people are not going to want to come to me for help.
Yeah.
But actually it's really the opposite.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
there was something else I wanted to touch on that you said because everyone on the podcast kind of knows my thing with
Mhm.
diagnosing and labels. I tend to move away from that. I think that
Mhm.
in the mental health field, like when you give somebody that label, sometimes they adhere to it more and it
True.
anchors them in it. But you're the other side of the coin. And I
Hmm.
love that so much because for you, it gave you power. It gave you this, now I can understand what's going on and now I know how to approach it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think the what you're thinking is that if I label myself as shy, for example, my parents labeled me as shy, I started living up to their expectation, right?
Mhm.
So I see what you're saying there. I
Yeah.
totally get that. Um, so at church, if they would introduce me to some friends, and I didn't say anything, or I looked away, like, don't look at me.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, it's okay. Beth is just shy. Then I heard that and I thought, okay, that's what I am. I guess I have to be shy. But it's just very different now in my life. I think I'm owning my painful experiences, I guess, because this social anxiety was painful,
Hmm.
painful. And I'm realizing that I can turn that pain into a gift that I can share with other people and I can actually help them power through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of answered one of my questions I had for you because in your live today you mentioned that you have been dealing with this since you were 4 years old. And
Mhm.
I was wondering what the stimulus was that started at such a young age, but it was your parents kind of seeing that in you, the shyness, and that
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
set in and grew.
I think so. Although I think before they even labeled me that way, I sort of noticed it in myself. I remember specifically being on the church playground with two of my friends sitting at the top of the jungle gym. There were tons of kids around. We were like at a church camp or something. And I remember feeling even then, I'm going to say something stupid in front of these
Hmm.
two little cute blonde headed girls. It's just the memories that I can bring up. And in kindergarten and in first grade, feeling like I don't want to be here. I'm too anxious, but not having anyone to say, that's normal. Or Beth, do you know how common that is?
Yeah,
you know, so that's sort of why I believe in actually naming it. Um, for some people, for those other people that it may not work. It may be the opposite. It's
that's
really
true.
interesting, isn't it?
It is, and I'm sitting here thinking about, like, from a spiritual perspective,
Mm,
it seems that maybe, and you can tell me if this resonates with you,
yeah.
that it's possible that maybe your inner being or your soul came in with an intention of setting you up for this lifestyle of helping people, and you had to kind of go through all of that in order to come into it.
I love that you just said that because on my walk this morning, that's exactly where I was. I was actually thanking the universe, God, my higher power, my higher self, for having gone through the experiences, even though it was painful
Yeah.
and it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking exactly what you said, Katie. This is why. And even though I'm anxious about going public with this, um, there's a reason. There's a reason. So spiritually, I think my soul was set up to come into this world, go through a series of experiences so I could be where I am now.
Yeah. When we look at it that way, it helps to kind of align with it and realize, wow, this is kind of interesting and fun to see it unfold. Even though
Yeah.
you're right, that's difficult stuff to go through, but that's the stuff that really fed your desire to overcome it and say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I'm going to step into my power here. And this is
Mm-hmm.
an area where I feel like I could have some growth. And you did, and you stepped into it in a really big way, just not for yourself, but now you're holding that place for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that
Yeah.
you're describing it that way, holding space for others
Yeah.
to share their story.
Well, what is the response from other women that you work with?
Well, you know, until today, when I sort of went live on my in my Facebook group, I have described myself as being not very confident growing up, having a true fear of public speaking because of a major panic attack that I had in ninth grade, and it just really threw me for a huge loop. For 20 years, I played very small, and I did not publicly speak, sing, do anything. I would skip school on presentation days, Katie.
Is
I
that
mean,
what it was? Was
it
it a
was a phobia.
presentation that
It
kind of
was
stimulated that?
actually it was a reading out loud in my
Mm,
ninth grade history class. And I had read many times before with no problem. It wasn't a problem of reading, it was a problem of all at once I realized that there were 30 other 15-year-olds watching me read.
attention. It was the
Yeah.
focus on
It was
you.
the focus on I was the center of attention and I had to perform.
Yeah.
And I just melted down emotionally, had a full-blown panic attack right there in the class that wasn't handled very well by the teacher.
Oh, that's
And
unfortunate.
so, yeah, it really was. I didn't share it with anybody. And so I repressed it, which then became a phobia for
Mm,
20 years. I was in my mid 30s before I decided to seek help for that particular incident.
yeah. Yeah, I relate with you a lot on that because
Really?
I had that in
Mm-hmm.
school too. And I think we talked a little bit about how I would stand up in class to do my presentation or read or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and I would turn into a tomato because I have that tone in my skin. And when I would
Yes.
get overwhelmed, I would turn bright red. And so
Yes.
everybody knew how I felt and I couldn't hide it. And it was awful.
Yes,
It was
I
the
know.
worst.
I know. And I have worked with a lot of women who have that flushing, it red mostly in the neck, but sometimes on the face.
Yep.
That's definitely a sign. So, fortunately, I did not have that, but I just actually just melted down
Yeah.
emotionally. The hyperventilating, the heart racing, the feeling out of body like, what is
Yes.
happening to that little girl down there?
Oh my gosh, I totally know what
Oh,
you mean. I felt
you
like my heart
do?
yes, my heart was beating so fast when I was up there. That's all I could hear in my ears
Yeah.
was my heart, and it felt like it was gonna burst out of my chest, and then there's all these people
Yes.
just staring at you quietly, and you're like,
Yes.
"Ah, get me out of this situation."
Yes, that's how I felt, like fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
And to add on top of that, a friend of mine over in the corner was laughing.
Oh
As I
gosh.
was melting down, she was laughing. So
Hmm.
it was just, oh, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then actually, my story is kind of similar to yours too because
Mm.
it came into my 30s when I started kind of putting myself in that situation, and I
Uh-huh.
started realizing that if I had to give a speech, like my sister's wedding, or I threw an anniversary party for my parents, and I wrote a speech, I put it on myself to stand up there and give
Right.
this
Good for
speech,
you.
and I
Good for
thought,
you.
I don't know, I just kind of came into this, I can do this,
Yeah,
and I have something to say, and I want to say it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you have to reach that point where the pain of not blossoming becomes worse than the pain of staying small. There's a
Yeah.
wonderful quote that I love. I'm going to read it because I just
Yes,
love
please
this.
do.
It's by Anise Nin. She's a poet, and it says, "And the day came when the risk it took to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
Oh,
And I try to live by that. It's we're not meant to be small, to play small, to not have a voice, to not speak our truth. We're just not meant to do that.
yeah.
And so I'm so proud of you and I'm proud of myself for doing this
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Yeah.
and was that your first Facebook Live ever?
No, no,
Okay.
I go live in my group a lot because that is how I actually started my business, was wanting to help other women go live so that they could attract their ideal clients to them. And so that was sort of my premise. But then when I realized why, like getting at the root of what is behind all that fear and anxiety.
Oh my gosh, you're kinda making me feel like I gotta go live, and I and I don't
Yeah,
want to.
I get that. I totally get that.
I've done one, but hosted by
Yeah.
someone else where I'm a guest on
Yeah.
their live, but I've never gone live, you know what I mean?
I
Like
do know what you mean.
yeah.
I do know what you mean. And that's a great point right there, because I have a 3-week boot camp that I run for people who really want to go live. And we take really small steps, really small. Like, you don't go live until the end of the program. And what you do is you go live as a guest, right?
Oh,
Just
so
like
it's a way to ease in.
you ease into it.
Yeah.
I have found that that's just absolutely the best way to face a fear, is to not try to bite it off all at once.
Oh gosh. So, okay, like, back to how women are responding to this because I really
Yeah.
want to I understand from personal experience what that anxiety feels like. And here you
Hmm.
are and you're somebody who's in their corner and you're helping them through it. Does that make all the difference for them? Like, do they tell you that? Because I feel like it would.
Yes. Yes. I've worked over the last year with a few actually clinical psychologists
Yeah.
that blew me away. I was intimidated by them. I was like, okay, you're a psychologist. You've got your stuff together, right?
Yeah.
This was my interpretation. And they were like so amazing and said, I'm used to the one on one. I can sit and listen all day to a client, but I don't want to be public.
Mhm.
I have a fear of being public. And so, yes, they're so appreciative. And that just warms my heart.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something that people suffer from a lot. I mean, I looked up
Yeah.
the statistics. 15
Yeah.
million Americans, that's 7% of the population, are suffering from social anxiety. That's a lot of
Whoa.
people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That is a lot of people. And I think it's hard for us to sometimes know that we're dealing with it. We know we don't feel right. We know
Yeah.
something's wrong. We sit in a meeting or we sit at a restaurant and we're uncomfortable, but we just really don't know why. And that, I think, can be more painful than knowing. Yeah. And in your statistics, did it mention anything about it being genetic? That was something that I learned recently too. A third of it is genetic. So whether it's
Okay.
epigenetic, whether it's our parents had this, I know both my parents had it, and I watched it. And then I guess whether I got a gene that, said social anxiety or shyness. I think there really is a shyness gene, right? Um, but it doesn't really matter if it's genetic or it comes from your environment. I think the key is you don't have to live in pain. You don't have to live with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did an episode actually on phobias, and one of the
Oh,
things that I learned was, there was this in my research, there was a genetic discussion, and I was like, "Huh, this is really interesting." I think a lot of times what seems like genetic, passed on,
uh huh.
might just be what you're talking about, witnessing other people modeling and being in
Oh,
that I don't know, this is just
Yeah.
I come from the standpoint of law of attraction, and so I look at
Uh-huh.
everything from universal law, and
Uh-huh.
it would make sense to me that if you're exposed to something and it has this kind of emotional response around it, and it continues to happen and gains momentum, that that would become bigger and bigger and bigger. And then if you have a belief now about something,
Mm.
that that's
Mhm.
pretty solid in who you are until you face
Mhm.
that belief and turn it around.
That's true. And I actually did this. I actually witnessed my father in particular, who was a true extrovert. He loved meeting new people. He never met a stranger, Katie. And yet he struggled with this social anxiety, which I
Wow.
find fascinating
That is
because,
fascinating.
because I think a lot of people associate social anxiety with introversion,
Yes.
and it's just not the same thing. Um, so I witnessed my father in church being called on to say the blessing in front of the whole congregation, and he just it was
Wow.
horrible for him, horrible. And yet he would go after church and he'd be the last one to leave because he was talking to everybody.
Well, he's like what you were saying, the psychologist who is really good one-on-one,
Yeah,
but then you stand up in
yeah,
front of a group of people, it's a whole different story.
whole different story.
Yeah,
All eyes on you.
right.
Yeah,
There is a lot of pressure that comes with that, you
there
know?
is.
It's because it's all on you. It's not conversation. It's
Yes,
it's a speech.
yes.
But you're right. You do associate it with introversion because you
Hmm.
think if somebody's not social, then that means they have an anxiety, associated with that. But that's not the case.
Right.
Yeah, my husband, he's very extroverted, but you would not find him choosing to stand up in front of a bunch of people either.
Really?
No, no way. I don't
That's
think most
interesting.
people, I think the majority of people
Yeah,
don't feel comfortable speaking in front of big groups of people.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think so too. And then when you've got social anxiety on top of that, it
Yeah.
just takes it to another level.
Yeah. Did you ever take speech in school?
Oh, hated it.
Right? What
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
hated it, hated it. Yes,
Was
I
it a
did.
was it a requirement?
Yes, it
Of
was.
course. Yeah.
Of course. Did I enjoy it or did I learn anything? No.
No, well, it's and that's another thing. Really hard to learn when you're in that stimulated state of being.
Mhm.
You're overwhelmed with emotion and it's negative. You just wanna
Mhm.
go away. You can't
Yeah.
learn in that kind of environment. So really
No.
when teachers are making kids get up, I remember it when it was my presentation coming up, I couldn't understand what anyone else before me had said. There was no way
Ah,
I was taking their presentation in because all I could think about is mine's coming, mine's coming, mine's coming.
exactly. That is so true.
Yeah.
It's like torture.
It is like torture.
Definitely, definitely.
I wonder,
Oh,
I mean, there definitely should be some more research on this because
you
I
know
feel
what?
like
Yeah, and I have a 26-year-old daughter who teaches 2nd grade, and I think I'm gonna have this because I think she has some social anxiety too, and I'm gonna ask her, how does she get her students up in front? Or does she? Or
yeah.
what is the latest research on that?
Well, yeah, and I'm kinda curious too because, kids, they really it doesn't bother them at first when they're really
Mhm.
young.
Yeah, yeah,
Most kids are okay just being themselves and being
right,
goofy in front of their classmates
right,
or whatnot, and then it kinda
right.
develops. It becomes something that is a fear response.
That's true. That is so true too.
Yeah.
Like, maybe in middle school or 6th grade, but I don't know, for me, it was like
For you, it was early. It was
4,
practically your
4 and
whole life.
5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But you mentioned that your parents both had it too. So you
They
really were
did.
exposed to it at a very early I mean, your whole life, really, right from
That's
you
true
came in.
too.
Yeah.
That right.
We're
Like you
really
said
unpacking it here.
like you said, I was, on a spiritual level, this was my journey. I was
Yeah.
supposed to be here for certain things.
Right. Well, if you
Yeah.
were on that had that intention, it would make sense to choose 2 parents that would make that kind of environment for you.
Wow. Okay, now you've really got me thinking. That's why I chose my parents. Yeah.
Well, maybe one reason.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, well
Yeah.
well, I wanna know, like, what What is
Sure.
it that drives you? What is your real focus in this life? Like, let's say you get to the end of your life and you want to say, I did it. I did what I came to do. I feel good about
Hmm.
it. What is that intention that you have in this work that you're doing?
I love that question. And I think it would be that I have taken some very intense pain. I've done whatever I needed to do. I'm still doing it, Katie, to be honest with you. I'm still doing energy clearings and, you
Yeah.
know, talking to my spirit guides and asking God to help me, show me what I can do with this. So it's not done yet.
Yeah.
I just turned 70 in December. And I've often thought, why are you still doing this, Beth? Why are you still putting yourself out there? Why are you still making yourself anxious to go through this? Why can't you just retire and just live, just enjoy life, right? Just stay in your comfort zone. I don't think I'm supposed to. I think I'm
Mm.
supposed to keep learning, keep growing until I leave. And hopefully, in that, I'll have touched other people's lives and helped them on their life journey.
Well, one of the things that you wrote down, I took note of, was that this used to be something you downright hated, speaking in
Hmm.
front of people, but
Hmm.
you've actually come to the point where there are times you enjoy it.
I do. I do. And in fact, and that's crazy, isn't it? Um, in fact, sometimes when I would give a speech in even in my doctoral program, I would sit down and people would say, "Wow, you're such a natural," and I'm like, "What?" It was hard for me to believe that because I never saw myself that way. So yeah, that I don't know why that is, but I think it is a gift. I think it is a gift that I'm still honing and still working on and hopefully can share that with others. I have this crazy idea that I want to do a TED Talk someday, and it scares the
Oh,
crap out of me. It scares me so much, but it's in my mind to maybe do that.
ooh, it's percolating.
Yeah, it is. It's percolating.
Oh, I
Maybe when
love
I'm
that.
80.
Who knows when the
Who
opportunity
knows?
will arise.
Who knows? That's true. That's true.
Well, I love that. I
Oh,
think that what I talk about is every subject is two subjects, and that is
mm,
what you want or the lack of what you want. And
hmm.
in any given situation, you can choose to focus on either direction. There's always something that can be satisfying in every moment, or there's something that could be dissatisfying.
Oh, wow.
And those moments where you are enjoying it, you're actually enjoying being in front of people, speaking, and
Hmm.
showing them who you are. Because really
Hmm.
that's what it is. It's a
Yeah,
vulnerability of here I am in front of all of you.
right.
And those moments where you're enjoying it, you're stepping into that alignment with your higher self and you're actually feeling satisfied in that moment. And those are moments to live for.
I love that.
Yeah.
You just perfectly described how it feels when I step over the anxiety. It's like anxiety, 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 and then it stops. And then I just love the heck out of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so you perfectly described that. Like that's when you know you're in alignment.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and
Hmm.
I love that you have that. I love that you show it to everybody. I think that that's what people sense in you, and that's why people are coming to you and wanting help from you because you embody that which they want. They want to
Hmm.
have that satisfying feeling and overcome that anxiety because that's not who they
Hmm.
really are.
No,
No.
it's not. It's not.
So how can people find you if they want to work with you?
So people could just look for me on Facebook, also on Instagram, and the name
Under
of
your
my
name or
under
emerging?
my name, but also the Facebook group is Emerging You Courageous and Visible Women Entrepreneurs and Leaders. So, yeah, love to have you in my Facebook group.
Do you have a website?
It's www.emergingyou.new Zendler, Zenler.com.
Okay. If you are suffering from social anxiety and you're ready to face it and overcome it, then you can reach out to Beth and you know that you have someone in your corner with you. And you know what? Just having someone there makes all the difference because it gives you that foundation of, I've got somebody who believes in me too. And you get to step into that knowing that you're worthy. You can do this. It's okay. You don't have to feel that negative feeling of anxiety and vulnerability because you have something to say and it's worth being said. All right, what do you want to leave everybody with?
Oh, wow. Live your truth. Find out, dig deep into your soul, find out who you are, how you were made, how you were wired, and live into that and face your fears. Face your fears.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been
Thank you
a
so
real
much
pleasure
for
for me.
having me. Me too. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for all you do, Katie.
If you're enjoying the podcast, you can show your support by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. You also can follow Dr. Williams' podcast on all social media platforms and subscribe on YouTube and by going to www.drwilliamspodcast.com. Deliberate creation is the key to living life satisfied, and that is my wish for all of you.